Most people probably believe that debtors' prisons are ancient history, but since the 1970s, the United States, more and more American citizens have been thrown into jail over their debts, and private debts, by the way. And in the last few years, judges have increased the number of people being put into prison because they can't pay their bills. According to a recent report by the ACLU, more and more American citizens are being thrown into prison by judges who say that private bills held by collection agencies is now a criminal offense, which most legal experts agree is a clear violation of the equal protection clauses of the 14th Amendment. But as the corporate stranglehold on America gets stronger, it's becoming increasingly clear that corporations always get what they want. Very rare that they don't get what they want. And right now, they want to put Americans in jail if they're not able to pay their bills. Peter, when I looked at this story, look at these headlines. I've been hearing this story for quite some time, where for criminal offenses, the people that can't pay child support, whatever it may be, it evolves into a criminal offense, and they're thrown in prison, in jail for that. But this is much different. This is somebody's got a hospital bill, for example. They can't pay the hospital bill, and they end up going to jail for it. The ACLU has followed this a long time. And now, I mean, thousands of cases of this happening. What's your take?
They've documented a lot of really horrific stories. I mean, what's really happening is that this industry, from the legal perspective, these huge firms, that pay their lawyers almost nothing. It's just a machine where they're churning out, claim after claim, and then they send a notice to somebody that hasn't paid their hospital bill or bounced a small check, and the defendant doesn't show up for the court hearing. So if they don't show up for the court hearing, as you know, then the court enters an order, and it can be contempt, which can be criminal, and then they don't get the notice, they don't show up, they get another notice of contempt, it goes on their record, and then an arrest warrant is issued for failure to appear. But think about the kind of people that can't pay their hospital bills. They don't have insurance. They rent, so they move a lot.
Right.
So it's hard to find them. And then they get pulled over for a speeding violation, and they get thrown in jail, and then they can't get out because they can't pay the bail. And this might all over be, like you said, a hospital bill or some bounce check for a pizza or something ridiculous.
Well, I mean,
and then they're sitting in jail.
Think about this. Would you ever believe that an inability to pay a bill, like a hospital bill, could land you in jail? But this takes cooperation. You see, this is what everybody misses. This takes some cooperation with the prosecutors and with the judge. Now, these are criminal prosecutors that are kind of helping in all this. And here's how it works. I mean, you show up, you're supposed to get a notice. First of all, they got to give you a notice that there's a hearing, right?
Right.
A lot of people get this in the mail. It looks like stuff mail. It looks like irrelevant kind of mail.
You've moved. Your lease is up, or you got evicted.
So it says you've got to appear in court. They don't appear in court after a post-judgment where there's already been a hearing. There's been a default hearing. Yes, they have not paid the $1,000 that they owe the hospital. They're in default. So then they're supposed to get a notice and says, show up for your post-default hearing.
Right.
They have a right to do that under due process. But the problem with the due process argument here is it's rarely even a showing that they got the notice. As you say, they could have moved away. There's any reason they might not have gotten the notice. And then the whole due process of what occurs in that courtroom, as far as before you're throwing somebody in jail. This doesn't happen. I can just tell you something. This doesn't happen without the cooperation of really second-rate, bottom-feeder prosecutors, bottom-feeder plaintiffs' judges that handle these cases, and bottom-feeder judges. That's the only way this happens. Because the judge is always going to say, well, wait a second. Okay, give me a proof of notice. I want more than your word. I want to see something more significant.
Yeah, I was really troubled by the fact I had no earthly idea that some of these companies actually contract with the prosecutor's office. I had no earthly idea that there was an agreement between the bill companies and the prosecutors, and that there was a quid pro quo and back and forth. That just seems to violate just not only common sense, but to have the prosecutor on a criminal side to help actually pushing a civil claim through criminal means, like failure to appear.
Yeah.
That just seems like
one thing is clear. One of the stories here, this is a very typical story that the ACLU uncovered. Woman she owed a hospital bill. She was deathly ill, had a hospital bill. Matter of fact, she left where she was living to go live with her parents so she could recover.
Right.
Okay? So they supposedly send her this notice, you're in default on the bill, you have to show up in court for a post-default hearing. She doesn't even get the notice. So one night in her pajamas at her mother's house, she's literally in her pajamas, knock on the door, they're there to arrest her in front of her 12-year-old daughter and 8-year-old autistic son, 4-year-old son as well. So they haul her away, and she spends time in jail because she can't even make bond to get out of jail. The problem is this, again, I can't say this enough, this doesn't happen without really second-rate, bottom-feeder lawyers and judges being involved in this.
I mean, to have arrest warrants issued in a debt case is one way to kind of clean this up. You just can't have arrest warrants issued. You can have civil contempt, which is different, but you can't have arrest warrants issued for failure to appear. I mean, the lady you just mentioned, she was recovering from cancer.
Right.
I mean, so now, then she lives with her parents because she can't afford it. She moves out of her place, and she ends up staying in jail because she can't get out. I mean, the ACLU's come up with a couple of guidelines, and you know, one of those is no more contractual relationships between the district attorney's office with private check collection companies, which is a little scary to start, and that courts can't issue arrest warrants in debt collection cases. That seems kind of like common sense. I mean, debtors' prisons hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, look, this is, I would say for 50 or 60 years, this type of thing could have been done.
Right.
But you had maybe you had more responsible lawyers, maybe you had more responsible judges who weren't willing to say, yeah, I'm going to go along with this. Can you imagine a state-paid prosecutor having a contract with a private entity, a debt collection? Yeah, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to throw these deadbeats in jail. That's basically what this has come down to.
No, absolutely. It really doesn't seem like that controversial that we should be throwing people in jail. You know, another way to deal with this is you got to hold people accountable, right? You need them to show up for court.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much common sense.
You got to give notice.
Yes, you got to give them notice, and even if they get notice, you have to have evidence. But what a waste on our system that we're sending police officers out to go arrest people, like that lady that you send a police officer over an unpaid medical bill. You take the resources from the county to go arrest her, and then you put her in jail and you take her out. It is, and she's never going to pay back the bill.